Well, today we're talking about an issue that hasn't been in the forefront of the news in Palo Alto since 2011. That's Palo Alto's quest to build a plant in the Baylands that can turn our dinner scraps and our lawn clippings into clean, mean energy. Gennady, this week you're reporting in the edition of the Palo Alto Weekly that there's been a quiet but significant pivot on this issue, and maybe you can start us off by explaining that.
Yeah, sure, Jocelyn. And just to add, in addition to the clippings and the dinner, there's also the stuff that comes after dinner. The sludge, it's the third part of the formula. But there's three products, sewage sludge being the third, that the voters had in mind for being processed at the local plant. But yeah, as you mentioned, there was a pivot. It was very quiet and it was very gradual, but it does make me kind of realize, we often say election have consequences, and 2011 you had Measure E, and 65% of the voters supported this plan to build this big plant near the Baylands, and opponents made a few statements, against Measure E, saying we should be shipping elsewhere, not too far. It shouldn't be built in the Baylands, at least not on the Bixby Park site. And when you see what actually happened, and you would be hard-pressed to figure out which side won, because it seems like proponents of Measure E got the votes, but it feels like everything that's happened since then, you would think that the other side won just basically based on what happened since then.
Yeah, they were given a 10-year window, effectively, to get this plant planned, built, funded, whatever. And here we are 6 years in, and we're still without plans, and we're even without technology.
Right. Well, there's plans, but they certainly shifted. And I just want to read, in the Measure E, one of the key components was we want to keep things local. The measure said ceasing local composting will cause significant environmental impacts, as Palo Alto will have to haul yard trimmings, basically elsewhere. And since then, as of 2015, the city ships its yard trimmings to North San Jose. It's shipping its food waste to North San Jose. And the only facility that the council has really approved is the dewatering and truck haul-off facility at the water treatment plant. And the whole purpose of that facility is to allow the city to ship the sewage sludge out of Palo Alto somewhere else to a location to be determined. So it seems like once that's in place, all three sources of waste are going to be shipped elsewhere, which runs counter to the second paragraph in Measure E. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of striking.
Yeah.
How does hauling out the waste impact services to residents?
Well, in two ways. First of all, Palo Alto residents now have more options for disposing of their waste. Before they didn't have green bins. As of 15, they could now compost, and they could now throw out their food scraps in green bins instead of the black bins, and they are going to get processed. So that's a new service. People like it. It's like a good effect. The not so good effect is that the prices have gone up because these things aren't cheap. The new agreement with Green Waste of Palo Alto, which is the hauler, included substantial increases in how much the city spends to do the anaerobic processing in San Jose, and so. We had 2 years ago, basically, the refuse rates went up by 9%. Last year, the refuse rates went up by 9%. This year, they went up by a mere 5%. But these are real costs that really that show up in people's bills and really kind of make more complex the question of how do we really feel about taking care of our waste in a sustainable way, and how that clashes with the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of funny that it was such a huge battle between two different sides of the green. It was green wars.
And it was quintessentially Palo Alto. You don't have the coal industry against environmentalists. You have conservationists versus sustainability. Exactly. Everybody's proven environmentalists, so it was really interesting to see that kind of clash.
Yeah, and there were a lot of claims that were coming out. And I know that one of the key issues was this transportation issue. Goodness, we don't want to be sending trucks, every day, every week down to San Jose. At that time, there was also Gilroy.
Yeah, at that time, I should point out, at that time, Northern San Jose facility didn't even exist. It came online in 2013, but so everything was being sent to Gilroy, which is substantially further, and put into landfills, which is significantly less sustainable. Yeah. So that was kind of the issue that the people were dealing with at the time, and I feel like the San Jose facility kind of changed the conversation in some ways. And
it totally.
So the trucking issue. Kind of
so that's 12, 15 miles from there instead. Yeah. I think one of the claims that was brought out was that parkland, so this is, for everyone's, so they can picture it, so it's the end of the Embarcadero Road. There was a former dump. It was being closed, and then they wanted to revert that land into parkland, which was agreed on in 1960 something. So that 10 acres is now being, held. I liked how you described it in your cover story. Back at that time, sort of a lumpy, area where it's lying fallow.
It's no one's idea of a pristine park. It's
exactly.
not what we think when we think of the Baylands generally.
Yeah. But I think the land is pretty key because there's 120 something acres of Bixby Park. This 10 acres is kind of in limbo until 2021. And at the same time, the regional water quality control plant is out there, and that's kind of playing a role possibly in the future for dealing with some of the biosolids, the bio-waste.
I feel like it's pretty inevitable that it will play a huge role. And I think there was a recognition that that particular site, because it's right next to the regional water quality treatment plant, the new plant has to be there. It really wouldn't make sense to have, especially sewage processing in another part of the city,
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why that location was chosen. And I think even though Measure E basically freed up that land to be used for a new facility, as you mentioned, it does have a 10-year time frame, and if 2021 doesn't happen, the city council could just basically revert it to parkland.
Yeah. I actually kind of want to know what did the 10-year window mean? Does that mean it has to be built and running by then, or does the concept have to be far enough such that the city is actually committed, even if it's not built?
The latter, and I think it's mostly up to the political decision makers. The 10-year thing doesn't specify that the plant has to be built, but it does specify that after 10 years, the city council could vote to rededicate it. So that's pretty much what the 10-year timeline. It could be that by 2021, there's been sufficient progress, even if there's no definite plans, that the council will say, let's keep it non-parkland, or by default it will be non-parkland. But
well, I'm wondering if we have to vote on it again.
I think the city council would make that vote. And I'm not sure, I could look that up, but I think the voters might have a chance to do that after that point, but I think the city council is kind of seen as the vehicle for rededicating it. And it's something that Emily Renzel and other conservationists in the anti-Measure E camp are eagerly looking forward to.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I wasn't here in 2011, so
oh, you missed out.
What was the timeline for the rollout? I mean, why didn't any of this get done sooner?
Well, the 2012 was a big date for because that's when the landfill was closing in Baylands, and Palo Alto for decades has been sending. It had a little compost operation with windrows, and so when the landfill was set to close, like a year or two, maybe 3 years, I think 2009, 2010. The Palo Alto got really serious. They were hit with the prospect of losing its compost services, and they really started talking about what do we do after the landfill closes. So that was kind of the impetus for kind of rethinking the whole the whole waste disposal operation. And of course, since then, there's been another rethinking, which has more to do with the economy.
Yes. Well, during 2011, there was much discussion and debate over how much would this technology actually cost if we were to build it. So it ranged from like 50 million to 250 million, which is quite a sizable guesstimate, I would say.
Yeah, because they looked at many different things. I think the ones that they were really considering was the anaerobic digestion plant that would be roughly in the 50 million range. But as you know, the economy is doing really well, which is really terrible for the city's infrastructure plan. It's one of the kind of unfortunate effects of what otherwise is a good economy.
Yeah, construction costs are
to the roof.
higher.
And so now it's expected to be like 75 million, and that's like that's really slowed things down. I mean, the city did go out to bid to potential companies that could build such a plant, and the bids came in much higher than expected, so the council basically rejected all of them. And so there's a whole rethink now that aligns much more closely with people who opposed Measure E in the first place.
Even though the measure was decided in 2011, I mean, I think some of the issues are still viable. I mean, do we have, so you're mentioning anaerobic digestion. The Zero Waste Energy Development North San Jose plant uses anaerobic digestion, dry anaerobic digestion. Is it redundant for us to be building something up here? I mean, is that the best stewardship if it's going to cost $75 million? Well, that's one of the questions that's out there.
That'll be up for the city council to decide, but of course the people who oppose Measure E would adamantly say it's very redundant. Even before the San Jose plant, the argument against Measure E stated, we already have a cost-effective, proven regional solution. You know, since 1992, over 80% of our refuse has been disposed of regionally, and so that was their call back in 2011. And now you have new plants, not just in San Jose, but there's a new gasification facility in Redwood Shores, which Palo Alto isn't using it, but they'll be monitoring it in case that's the kind of technology that can come in here. So yeah, from that camp, the overwhelming answer is yes. I mean, we were talking about thinking regionally all along, but now it's like the rest of the city has caught up to us.
Yeah. One thing that I'm unclear of is who exactly, so we're talking about the city's waste, but is there some sort of partnership when it comes to like the regional water quality control plant, such that other cities would have some sort of influence on what Palo Alto does? I think you mentioned there's an East Palo Alto advocate for a different technology. I don't understand
for gasification, yes, because basically, as you know, the regional water quality control plan is a partnership between Palo Alto and other cities, you know, like and Stanford and Mountain View, and so East Palo Alto. So basically, if they have to make a huge improvement to the plant, such as building like an anaerobic digester or gasification or pyrolysis or anything else next to it, they would need buy-in, both politically and financially, from the other communities. And so the East Palo Alto Sanitary District isn't sold yet that this is the best technology. There's one member.
Digestion.
I'm sorry, yes, the anaerobic digestion. And so there's been a push there to kind of look at the gasification route, which has a smaller footprint. So, and it is kind of going in that direction now.
Yeah, that's not unexpected actually, because in 2011, some people were claiming, oh, this is anaerobic digestion, it's proven technology, it's in Stockholm, it's in wherever. But it definitely felt at the time like there was just so much uncertainty over which technology is going to be the proven technology and how the cost is going to come down.
Yeah, there was uncertainty about both the benefits of the various technology, and there's also uncertainty and ability to predict the future, which is very understandable. I feel like, you know, if people in 2011 knew that, you know, prices are going to be that high, it might have been a different conversation then.
Yeah.
But
it was hard to know, of course.
Right.
Yeah. You've talked with a number of people from the pro and the con side, Peter Dreckmeyer, former mayor, Phil Bobles, city staffer, Emily Renzel. Is there a more conciliatory tone right now? Are the sides coming together for some reason? And is that just because of the passage of time?
Absolutely. I think they've kind of they've converged kind of a little bit towards the middle. I mean, Peter Dreckmeyer and Cedric de la Boujardière, both of whom were very much for Measure E, they both said they were disappointed, but they kind of understood the city's direction because of the economy. They're disappointed it's taken this long, that the economy plays such a big factor if it was done earlier, construction. But that's a Palo Alto issue, you know, things take a while. So they're disappointed, but they don't feel betrayed or anything like that by the city's approach. Emily's obviously not disappointed. She's happy, but, you know, she's not gloating because it remains to be seen what ultimately happens at the site. You know, the city hasn't completely discarded the idea of anaerobic digestion or the idea of using the Measure E site. It's just kind of slowly backing away from it and looking at other alternatives. So I don't think Emily or anybody on her side is really kind of going rah-rah about what's happening.
Dancing in the streets.
But I should point out, everyone's really, really happy about the retirement of incinerators, and I think that's the issue that's really kind of brought both sides together. It's probably the highest source of greenhouse gas pollution in the city, and it's like it's expensive. It's one of the only two in the state, and so once it goes out, even if the processing isn't local, I think everybody sees it as a huge victory, and so that's kind of the one thing that now unites them.
Yeah.
And so they're probably right here, whereas they were back there.
They were definitely, far apart. It seems like one quote that you had in your story that I thought was interesting was the city staff is viewing the transportation, the greenhouse gases produced by trucking as kind of minor. I mean, that fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, partly this is because North San Jose is much closer than where they shipped before. And partly just has to do with the way they calculate them. And I haven't really gotten too deep into studying those numbers, but
they're technical if one wants to.
Because you know, there's so many variables as to, you know, what are you shipping, where are you shipping to, you know, that kind of stuff. And so, I think they've kind of come around closer to the anti-Measure E side in the sense that, trucking isn't great, but it's better than building a huge facility here, especially in Parkland.
There's kind of one claim from 2011 that stuck with me, which was we published an opinion from the anti-E side, and it was from Enid Pearson, and she said that if and when you do build a plant, then you're going to have to unearth all this garbage that was, because it's a bit of the old landfill, 3.5 million cubic feet of stinky berry garbage that have to be unearthed. And think about the methane that will be produced with that.
Yeah, that's true. I should point out, it wasn't just like, Emily and Enid, who are well known for conservation, especially like in the Baylands, they have like things named after them,
Yes.
and in the Orchidera Preserve.
Renzel,
I mean, you have much more kind of mainstream, more recent council members. You had like Judy Kleinberg, Sid Espinoza. I mean, these kinds of former mayors also opposed Measure E.
Yeah.
So, it's... There's a lot of disagreement, and a lot of camps that it's hard to predict, how they would form.
Yeah, who was going to align with whom. And valid reasons on both sides. It's just a matter of what people favored.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that, once you take away parkland, it's gone for good, and we should never sacrifice parkland. That was kind of like Sid Espinoza's point at that time.
Yeah.
And for others, it was more economic. They have different reasons, but it was interesting that everybody who considered themselves an environmentalist kind of had to choose between what shade of green they're going to choose that year.
Tough time. So should we expect to hear the words biochar and pyrolysis on the lips of council members soon, or is this topic going to recede back into the planning stages while the Hall-Out facility is getting constructed for the next couple of years?
The latter. Just earlier this year, in March, or actually no, in June, the city released its latest update on infrastructure, in which it had a section devoted to anaerobic digester and basically said, we're putting it on hold and we're going to evaluate other solutions. We mentioned gasifications and pyrolysis, which can result in biochar. There's 3 words for Wikipedia users to check out.
So we're not going to scroll at the bottom of the screen with definitions?
Yeah, they all use really, really high heat to process waste, and pyrolysis also produces biochar, which is a type of charcoal that's very valuable, and when placed into soil is a very sustainable kind of chemical. So the staff is going to be monitoring gasification and pyrolysis, which are very related processes, in the next couple of years, seeing how the gasification plant is doing at Redwood Shores. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be any major kind of decision made until after this truck haul-off facility. And that's we're looking at 2019 area. So I don't expect to see too much action, at least until then. Okay. But there should be plenty of celebration when that's in place and incinerators are retired for good.
It's amazing the things that we get to celebrate as a city. Well, on the technical side, but
it's very Palo Alto. But but it is a big move. I mean, it's a huge move for every camp of environmentalists. Getting those things shut down.
Okay. Well, we don't have many opportunities to kind of peel back the layers of what happened with a measure that we passed 6 years ago, and just get an update. So thanks for the good word, Gennady, and
my pleasure.
We'll look forward to whatever else happens on this, slowly but surely.
That's a lie.
All right, well, that wraps it up for Behind the Headlines. If you like our webcast, you can subscribe or like below. Follow us on paloaltoonline.com, and if you want to comment on this or any other topic, go to paloaltoonline.com/square for Town Square. And we'll see you next week.